I've decided that I'm going to do something a little bit different for my mid-year video. So I have been doing the mid-year book freakout tag for the last, oh gosh, like what, 7 years-ish? And I have decided that I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I came up with about 11 to 12 new questions that are all a little bit of kind of a riff on the original questions. There are a lot of new questions as well. Really, the ones I did a riff on are kind of like the standard, what was your favorite book, what was your least favorite book, those kind of questions. But I did come up with a lot of new questions as well. So I know that the original tag was co-created by Earl Grey Books and Read Like Wildfire, and I wanted to give all of the credit for the original questions to those two creators. But if you like these questions that I've come up with and you'd like to answer them in your own video, definitely go ahead, feel free to do so. You can credit me if you like, you can credit the original creators as well, and that would be great. But yeah, it's always just a little bit difficult to come up with like a new bookish tag, mainly because so many of the questions are kind of the exact same thing over and over and over again. I've been making videos for so long, and basically every bookish tag is just like 20 different versions of what books did you like, what books did you not like. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy these new questions. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, very fresh, a little bit different. And I'm gonna get right on in to the first question. So the first question is reading goal check-in. Are you on track? And so for me, almost every single year I make the same goal of reading 50 books. And that basically started back when I first made my booktube channel. My initial goal was 50 books. I really wanted to reach that number. I felt like that was a good, nice, round number. And I felt like it was really attainable, but also pushed me forward. And so ever since then, I have always made my goal 50 books every single year. Sometimes I read a lot more than that, but my starting goal will always be 50. And so I am currently at 38 books read, and today is July 14th, so basically kind of the smack dab middle of the year. And I have gotten to 38 books so far. I feel like that's pretty good for me. I don't think that that's like necessarily ahead or behind of what I usually do. There have definitely been years where I've read more than 38 books by the middle of the year, but I think that this is still pretty good, especially considering the fact that I have been kind of slumpy all year long. So it's kind of amazing that I've already read 38 books so far this year. The next question is book that made you believe the hype and deserved it. And so for that question, I ended up going with a book that I literally just finished a few days ago, and that was Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. And I ended up giving this book a 5 out of 5 stars, obviously. But this is one of those books that I had heard so much hype about. I had seen so many people talk about this book literally everywhere, all over Bookstagram, all over BookTok, all over threads, everywhere. And I had been wanting to read this book so bad, and I finally got my loan in from the library, and I ended up reading it in like maybe 2-3 days. I was absolutely obsessed. It was so good, so propulsive, and this one really lived up to the hype. I was a little nervous, mainly because this book really delves into grief and really deals with the kind of fallout from all of that. And so I was a little worried that it would either just like not be dealt with well, or would be just a little too heavy, especially for a romance novel. But I was definitely proven wrong here, and I absolutely loved it. If you didn't know, this book is about the main character, and she has recently lost her best friend and has been dealing with that grief, and has also just been trying to kind of like live her life. But she ends up working as a nanny for this family, and she meets the uncle, and he is kind of like a weird sort of presence in this family unit, and they kind of end up creating this friendship between each other and like helping each other out, and he's specifically helping her deal with her grief. And I really loved this book and the depiction of grief and the way these two blossomed through their relationship. I thought it was so sweet, so heartfelt, so well done, and highly recommend it. The next question is book you wanted to love but ended up hate reading, and that for me was Acts of Desperation by Megan Nolan. I truly did not like this book at all, and honestly I was pretty shocked that I didn't end up liking this book, mainly because I just went into it kind of thinking, oh, this is totally my kind of book, my kind of literary fiction, and I'm going to love it. Or at the very least, I thought it would just kind of be like a middling, maybe 3.5 star read, and I wouldn't really have a lot of strong feelings either way. But unfortunately, I ended up really not liking this book. So like truly it frustrated me so deeply. I think the thing that really bothered me about this book was that the main character just seemed to not really have her own sense of self and her own personality, and she was so enthralled and obsessed with this guy who was just nothing. There was nothing that could even remotely make me understand why she was so obsessed with him. He had no substance. There was nothing going for him. And usually with these kind of characters or with this kind of dynamic, there is something that is like intriguing about this guy or about this character that the main character is obsessed with. But in this instance, there was nothing. There was nothing drawing her in. There was nothing, you know, even redeeming about this guy. And in my review, I said, to be so deeply insecure as to debase yourself for the sake of romantic love is pitiful. And I personally hate reading books where I pity the main character. And I think that that basically just sums up my entire feelings, emotions about this book. I truly pitied the character throughout the entire narrative. And I can't read books like that. I just can't. I have to at least like feel some sort of emotional connection to the character. Not that I necessarily have to like relate to them, but I have to be able to feel something for them. And it can't be pity. It can't be me being like, that's sad for you. That's really sad for you, and yikes. Like that, I can't do it. I'm not gonna have an enjoyable time reading. So yeah, I really did not like Acts of Desperation. There's nothing redeeming about this book. The next question on this list is character that you formed an intense emotional connection to. And I ended up going with the main character in Overdue by Stephanie Perkins. This is an ARC and it doesn't come out until October 7th of 2025. And I loved this book. I read this book as an ebook on my Kindle while I was, you know, walking on the treadmill like I do. And I have not been able to stop thinking about this book and about this main character and about the plot and everything. So I feel like this like kind of surpasses just the main character, but it's also like an emotional connection to the plot itself. And basically in this book, the main character kind of decides that like she needs something different. Her current life path is no longer serving her, and so she decides to break up with her boyfriend, quit her job, and she goes and starts a business and opens a bookshop. And I have been thinking about that ever since I finished this book, because I'm like, I also really want to open a bookstore. And ever since this book, I've been like fantasizing about opening a bookstore and fantasizing about where it would be in my town and like the whole process of it. And I just like really kind of just put myself so deep into this narrative, and I really related to the main character. I really liked her depiction. I liked her personality. I really felt like I could see myself in this main character, and so I really enjoyed this book. Highly recommend it. Definitely pick it up when it comes out in October. But yeah, definitely really formed an intense emotional connection to basically everything about this book. The next question is a book that made you feel something weird and unexplainable, and for me, I ended up choosing the book Model Home by River Solomon. And I read this book kind of earlier in the year, but it has definitely stuck with me throughout this first half of the year because it was so creepy and so beautifully done, if that makes sense. Like, I just really love the way that this author was able to capture the emotional like fear and intensity of these real world abuses and kind of turning them into something a little bit more paranormal. I think that that's just such an interesting way of depicting real world, real life abuse, and kind of doing the thing where it's like abuse haunts a home and abuse haunts that person and the place where the abuse took place. And like, I think that that's such an interesting concept, and it's definitely been something that has stuck with me in the back of my mind. And yeah, this book definitely made me think really deeply, and I really just appreciated the way that everything was handled and the way that everything was shown. And I really love horror books that are kind of towing the line between, is this paranormal, is this real life, what's going on, is the narrative being honest to me, is the character being honest to me, you know, what's really happening. So yeah, I really enjoyed Model Home. Definitely a book that I will be thinking about for a long time. The next question is favorite book cover, aesthetically or emotionally, and for me, I ended up choosing The All Night Sun by Diane Zinna. I finished this book recently, but I've had this book on my shelf for so long, and I love the cover so much. It's beautiful. It has like this really gorgeous like texture to it. Like, it's not actually textured, but I love the way that you can see like the brush strokes and everything. I love the design. I love the colors in it. And every time I see this cover, it definitely reminds me a little bit of Tangled. It definitely has those same sort of colors and like that idea with like the blonde braid. And I really enjoy this cover. I think it's so pretty, and every time I look at it, it makes me feel so many emotions. And yeah, I really love this cover. I think it's really pretty. The next question is a book you want to reread already, and for me that would be This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I have become such a big Carly Fortune fan ever since I ended up reading this book and giving this author another chance. I loved this one so much, and it made me want to immediately visit Prince Edward Island. I have always really loved Anne of Green Gables, but it wasn't really until this book that I'm like, I really need to go to Prince Edward Island. Like, I actually need to add this to my list of places I need to travel to. And yeah, I really loved this book. Basically, this one is about this young woman, and she has this best friend who she has gone to visit on Prince Edward Island for many years. And actually, the first time that she ever visited Prince Edward Island and this friend, she ended up meeting her brother, kind of like not knowing that he was her brother. And they ended up hooking up, and they found out like, oops, that's my best friend's brother, that's my sister's best friend. And they kind of had like this really weird tension, attraction kind of going on ever since then. But when the best friend ends up getting married, or she's about to get married, and she's kind of having like this weird sort of breakdown about it, they all kind of end up converging on Prince Edward Island and coming back together, and obviously relationship things ensue, and emotions and attraction and romance. And so I really loved this book. There's something about it that is just so nostalgic and so warm and summery and beautiful. And I have already like recommended it to people, kind of being like, this is an adult version of The Summer I Turned Pretty, if that makes sense. Like, I love The Summer I Turned Pretty, but I needed an adult version, and this is perfect. And yeah, I really wish that I could reread it, especially with like a fresh brain. Also, actually, you know what? I think it'd be a lot of fun to reread it, even with the perspective of already having read it, if that makes sense. Like, I think that if I read it for a second time, there would be things that I maybe missed, and that I would have like almost a new or different experience with it. The next question is most booktok / booktube made me do it read. And this one is really interesting because it's kind of twofold, if that makes sense. I'll explain. I ended up choosing Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Wong, and this is a book that, yes, I did get recommended on BookTok very frequently, but also it's kind of like I read this book because of TikTok, if that makes sense. Like, I read it because of a lot of the trends and controversies and stuff that has happened on TikTok, specifically with beauty talk and skinny talk and stuff like that. I really felt compelled to read Natural Beauty as kind of a response to those sides of TikTok. And so I feel like there is kind of like that duality of like, yeah, it was recommended to me on BookTok, but I also wanted to read it because of TikTok. And basically Natural Beauty is kind of like this semi sci-fi-ish horror novel that is really about this like beauty centric, Eurocentric world that is just obsessed with these standards and perfection, and centers around this beauty cult. And I think that that's really timely, and I think that it is a really good response to a lot of the beauty related issues that are going on TikTok. The next question I really love, and that is your mid-year reading personality in 3 books. And so I figured I would kind of go through my reading journey this year and kind of be like, what 3 books would sum up so far, like the first half of 2025 for me. And I think it's really interesting because I kind of started off the year in a different vibe, and I ended the mid-year point on a very different vibe. So I think I kind of should pick 1 literary fiction book, 1 romance book, and maybe 1 like kind of wild card book. I think the first book I'll choose is Natural Beauty by Ling Wang, because I did read 2 books by Ling Wang. I read Immaculate Conception and I read Natural Beauty, obviously, and so I feel like that is a pretty good contender for book number 1. Book number 2, I think I'm going to go with Savor It by Tara DeWitt, because I feel like that also really explains a lot of like my romance tastes this year, very much like small town romance. And I feel like that's a good contender for book number 2. And then for book number 3, I'm going to go with All the Parts We Exile by Rosa Nazari. I think that that is really indicative of the type of nonfiction that I've been really enjoying. And so I think that those are some good picks for what my reading tastes have kind of been like this year, at least so far in the first half of 2025. The next question is another really interesting one, and that is, what's changed about your reading journey since January? And I've already kind of touched on that in the other question, but I will say that my reading journey has really shifted. So I started off 2025 reading books like All the Lovers in the Night, Winter, Blue Sisters, stuff like that. Very kind of typical literary fiction that I usually tend to read, especially like last year I read a lot of literary fiction. And then by like kind of the, I would say around like March-ish, so maybe like the quarter mark of the year, I ended up kind of burning out a lot on literary fiction and went really deep into romance. So I started reading books like The Next Best Fling, Great Big Beautiful Life, Elizabeth of East Hampton, and now towards the mid part of the year, I have read almost entirely romance. So I've read books like Meet Me at the Lake, Just the Tipsy, Beg, Borrow, or Steal, The Stand-In, Promise Me Sunshine, and I've really shifted my reading. And truly at this moment, the only genre that I've been picking up so far has been romance. I think the only non-romance book I've picked up in the last maybe 2 or 3 months has been The All Night Sun, and that's it. And even this book had quite a bit of romance in it. So I have just been really in a huge romance mood, and I think that that has really shifted in the last few months. Like, I've never read this much romance in one go, so it's really interesting. I'm just kind of like trying to ride the wave of romance, you know. I don't really want to shake things up too much because I don't want to get into a slump. So that has been fine, it's been going well, and I don't see this romance train stopping anytime soon. The second to last question is a genre or trope you're now obsessed with, and like I said, I've been in such a huge romance kick, but very specifically I've been in a small town romance kick. I love small town romance. I think it's so great, and I have found so many of my new favorite books from reading small town romance. So books like Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams, books like Just the Tipsy by Audrey Vaughn, books like Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune, Savor It by Tara DeWitt, This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune, Sips About to Go Down by Audrey Vaughn. Like, I love a small town romance. I think they're so much fun, and it's very different than the typical type of romance that I usually read. So the very last question is, what book or what books are you looking forward to reading in the second half of the year? And so I ended up choosing 3 books for this question, and I'll go through them. And the first book I have is All About Love by Bell Hooks. This is a book that I have been meaning to read for so long. I think I picked this up from Barnes & Noble maybe 2 years ago, and I haven't picked it up yet. But now I have been really diving into physical reading again, and I think that this is definitely going to be a huge contender for a book that I read in the second half of 2025, so I'm super excited. The next one I have is Outline by Rachel Cusk. I actually bought this book I think a few months ago, and I cannot wait to read it. I've been meaning to read Rachel Cusk for so long, and I finally was able to get my hands on a copy of her book because I have been looking everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I really truly mean it. And I know that that sounds ridiculous, like how were you not able to find one of her books? For some reason, the Barnes & Noble locations around me have not carried her books. I'm not sure why, they just haven't. And so I finally went to one of my local bookstores, and they ended up having a copy of her book, and so I was like, you know what? I think it's time to finally pick it up. And the last book on that list is All the Men I've Loved Again by Christine Pride. I actually just recently got this book sent to me from Atria, so thank you, Atria. But I am really intrigued by this book. I think it's going to be really exciting, and I love the cover. I think the cover is like 90% of the reason why I want to read this book. I love the cover. It's so cute. It's very pink and just very eye-catching. So yeah, definitely a book that I want to prioritize in the second half of 2025. All right, so those are all of the questions in what I am calling my mid-year bookish roundup. I think that's a really good title. I love the idea of a roundup. I think a roundup is really cute, and it kind of has like a little bit of a cowboy theme, which is adorable. So I hope you guys enjoyed all of these questions. Definitely, if you are interested in answering these questions as well, I would love if you made a video and tagged me. I would love to see it. And if you made it this far into the video, definitely leave the emoji with the little cowboy hat on its head. I think that'd be adorable, just so I know that you got to the very end of the video. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!